Okay, it's January 25th, 2019, and we are going to go over the previous keys, which was number 44, right?
Right.
And it was called Love and Marriage?
Marriage and Sex.
Marriage and Sex. And in part one, Bob just read the letter straight through as it stands. And now he's going to discuss it with you at some length.
Okay. There are a number of thorny issues here. And I want to deal with the first issue being the concept of ownership. Excuse me. Ownership, I call it a human weakness because it's something that has been with us down through human history, the concept of owning things and owning people. And it's wrong. It's totally flawed. And by saying flawed, I'm not saying good or bad. I'm saying flawed in the sense that it keeps us from coming to recognize our true value and who we really are. As I said in other videos on other topics, other issues not related to keys, I'm a gay man. One thing I have noticed, at least in this American culture, and I expect it's probably worldwide to some degree at least, again, it's a human issue, a human failing, is that often gay men tend to treat other men like objects. In like manner, many times straight men will treat women like objects. And it seems, in at least this culture and many others I'm sure, the popular thing to do these days. For one person to put another person in such an awkward and potentially damaging position, in the sense of, if you really love me, if you want to see me again, if you want us to keep getting together, you better put out for me. That renders the other person an object. And what pressure that puts on the other person to have to perform, to have to put out. Maybe they're willing to, maybe not. But the person who's wanting them to do that doesn't care. No one's an object. Each one of us is the complete totality of God incarnated in a form that may be shared, not owned. No one's an object. I don't believe you would look on God and think of God as an object or someone you own. If you're a guy and you're with a woman, I don't think if you could see that woman as God sitting next to you or across the dinner table from you, I don't think you'd be feeling like telling God, okay, when we're through here, go back to your place and better get ready to do it. In real, honest-to-God love, they're sharing. Not objectification, not ownership. I'll tell you something, you really... I'm trying to think what words I want to use for this one. You want to have one of the best climaxes of your life, or best orgasms of your life. Truly love the person you're with. Genuinely love them. See them as God. See them as God looking back at you, so they can see you as God looking at them. And when that moment of climax orgasm does happen, it'll be like none you've ever experienced. Probably in all of your eternity so far. Now, I know a lot of people think that if you read the Bible, God doesn't want us to have sex. What's wrong with Him? Well, that's not the case. And it's not the case with keys either. God is simply saying, if you're going to choose to have sex, do it for the right reasons. Do it in genuine love, not ownership. Don't consume each other. Share each other. This brings about another point, and it's a political point in our world today, especially here in America. And it's what people call women's right to choose, women's right of choice. And if you listen to what was just said in Keys about marriage and sex, it is not saying that women don't have the right of choice. They most certainly do. But that choice, to be very blunt about it, happens before you commit a certain act that can bring a child into this world. This is where I don't believe a man should ever have the right to pressure a woman into having to have sex with him in order for them to keep getting together. And as a woman, you certainly would have the right of choice to tell the man, not yet. Let's get to know each other better first. Let's get to genuinely love each other. And if we reach that point, then we'll see. I know in our world today it doesn't usually work that way. I'm well aware of it. And that's why we have a lot of the problems we do. That's why we have children being brought into a world when too often they're not wanted. They're abused. You definitely have the right of choice. You can blindly, uncaringly commit an act that might result in a pregnancy. And then I guess you go pay a lot of good money out to Big Pharma so you can get whatever type of morning after pill it takes to negate that. People, you're being dehumanized at a horrific, hellish rate. You're being trained to look upon life as virtually without meaning. It's inconvenient, get rid of it. Like throwing so much trash out. If that is the case that happens, then not only are your life and the life of your partner made poor, the life of the whole planet is made poor, because you don't know that child that isn't going to be now might have come up with a cure for cancer, might have come up with a way to end poverty or disease, or to reverse pollution, or to reverse aging. You don't know. That child may be somebody who will grow up and be just very loving and very caring. You don't know what potential you're throwing away. These last two letters, the apple and marriage and sex, deal with possibilities. They deal with futures. They deal with potential. And if you know, how can I put this? You need to know, male and female, that you have the right of choice. No one's taking that from you, certainly not God. But with choice comes responsibility. To be responsible with one another. Now, people in this country, in my country, in America, will say, I got rights, I got rights, I got rights. Well, what they don't seem to remember, and maybe they don't want to, is you also have responsibilities with every right. For example, you have the right to vote, but you also have the responsibility to get out and vote. The law of karma exists, cause and effect, though there's more to it than that. Karma is simply a lesson laid for the learning. And while it is not the most powerful law in the multiverse, by the way, there are many metaphysicians and many New Age people who think it is, but it's not. Love is the most powerful law of the entire multiverse, because love created the multiverse and sustains it and renews it. But given cause and effect, if you commit one deed, there's going to be some result. Certainly you have a choice. You have a choice that can make you be free to say, I'm not sure I want to do that right now, or okay, let's do. You have a responsibility with yourself and your partner, but you also have a responsibility if a child is the result of an act done by the two of you. You have a responsibility to that child, but you have a responsibility to the entire world. And for that matter, even to the multiverse. Because any child here may change things enough to make a difference throughout the multiverse. "2,000 years ago, I was born to a young woman." By the way, virgin didn't mean untouched, it meant young woman. If she had lived in our time, it's possible that she may have decided to terminate that pregnancy because she would have been unmarried, or because who knows what this child's going to grow up to be, or is inconvenient. My career means more to me than anything else. I'm saying that life should mean more to you than anything else. If that were the case, and she had decided to terminate that pregnancy back then 2,000 years ago, then your history of some guy by the name of Yeshua Actually, if you were going to translate that word properly from Hebrew, it would be Joshua. But when the Greeks got it, they turned it into Jesus, which later became known in the English language as Jesus. That person never would have lived. Think about it. If that mother had said, oh, this is inconvenient. Gosh, I could get stoned to death. I'm pregnant. I'm not married. And nobody's going to believe me if I told them it was God. I better stop this from happening. In her time, it would have been very inconvenient. And believe me, women were stoned to death when they were found to be pregnant and not married. People at that time felt that if they didn't kill someone who was a sinner like that, then God was going to punish the entire nation. They were wrong. Very wrong. Extremely wrong. But that was the misteachings they had based on some extraterrestrial teachings who people thought were God when they weren't. All of existence in history on Earth would have been different in a very much darker way had that young mother decided to terminate the pregnancy because it wasn't convenient. And pregnancy is not convenient. Children can be very inconvenient at times. Let's be honest. But real love isn't just for the happy good times. Real love is the strength to stay there and be there and be part of that child's life and be that child's life until that child is able to function on his or her own. As parents, potential parents, you are God, each one of you. But so is the child. No less than you are. Love is God, and love is infinite potential. And some decisions can promote that wonderful infinite potential, give it proper guidance, and watch it work miracles. And some decisions can cut that potential short before it can ever even happen. As God stated, when it comes to a matter of protecting the life of the mother during delivery, certainly that's understandable. But people, you got to get away from this concept that everything's a throwaway society. You got to get over this concept that life is cheap or life is disposable. I wanted to address these issues because I could see where the letter that I've just read might have some people saying, wait a minute, what's God saying in that? What? He's not saying you don't have choice. He's just saying make the right choice that's based on sharing and genuine love. And you know, there are cases where if you make a really horrendous wrong choice, you're not just hurting that other individual who might have been, you're hurting yourself spiritually. And you may never in this life, after that, even be able to see yourself as anything worthy of your true identity, which should not happen. You should always be able to see yourself as worthy of your true identity as God incarnated. But let's face it, there are things we do in life that can cause us to feel badly enough about ourselves, even in years to come, that cause us to think, oh, what he's saying in that book sounds good, but let's face it, it's not practical. I can't, I'm not deserving, I'm not worthy of, oh no. There are things we can do that can make us feel that way about ourselves for an entire lifetime. But we can make better choices where that doesn't have to happen. And when we do make wrong choices that can bring us down, that can cause us not to view us as we really are, then we have the right to lay those choices aside and get with the program and remember that we really are God, regardless. You see, this is not something that's deserved. Your godhood is not deserved. You can't earn it. You don't buy it, you don't earn it, you don't own it, you don't deserve it. It has nothing to do with any of that. All that's control mechanisms of the ego based on fear, based on the separation, the seeming separation. All you can do when it comes to Godhood is accept it, or temporarily deny it. And you're free to do so as short or long a time as you want. But sooner or later, when you're ready, in one lifetime or another, on one world or another, hopefully on this one sooner than later, for your benefit, and everyone else's, mine included, you will come to accept your identity as God incarnated. Not a little chip off the old block, not a spark of the light, not a child of God, not a kid of the king, but God. Period. End of statement. No clarifications, no ifs, ands, and buts, no conditions. But as accepting yourself as God. Does that mean you'll never make mistakes? No, you'll make plenty of them. Some of them will be horrible ones, probably. And even then you're going to need to remember more than ever who you are. When you hold something against yourself forever, you're not only holding yourself back, you're helping to hold others back too. Again, here's that being responsible with one another. So if you hold yourself back from your birthright as God, you're helping to hold everyone else back too. Not just on Earth, all across the multiverse. So when you're ready, don't be afraid to accept who you truly are. But it has to be a time when you're ready. It cannot be forced on you. And this is the concept of sharing. And this is the greatest good news that could ever be shared. And with that, I'm going to call it quits for the evening. I wish you all Godspeed.